Hello. I never know what to say for an intro. I always feel like my intros are so awkward because I don't know how to start it. One of my subscribers came up to me at Dragon Con, told me that they loved my videos, and she said that one of the things that she liked about them was like when I talk. She said that it's like unscripted, so it feels like I'm on like a video call or something with them. And so it's nice and cozy. And so I'm just gonna stick with that. Because I'm not about to like script my YouTube videos. Like I'm not about to like write out what I'm gonna say. I don't work that way. As you guys have probably figured out by now, I'm kind of like a just jump right in type of person. Anyway. For this video, we are going to be making a fake animation cell. For those of you who don't know, I worked in animation for almost 10 years. I worked on a variety of things, including Archer and America the Motion Picture, as well as like a variety of other things. But I obviously did not do traditional 2D animation in the sense of like paper and pencil cells and ink. That was before my time, but I love the look of them, and I even have some original cells in my hallway, which I will show you, as well as some original animation frames from Fantasia. And I just always think that it's such a fun thing, and it's kind of like a lost art, and it's really cool as like a collector's item now to find like the original cells from like various animation. The one that I'm hunting for that I want so bad is an original cell from The Last Unicorn, because that is one of my favorite movies. I'm looking for that, perpetually on the hunt, especially for one that's not like a bajillion dollars, because I don't have a bajillion dollars, unfortunately. If someone wants to give me a bajillion dollars, that would be great, and I would be very happy. But anyway, we're going to be working on cells. So if you don't know how it worked in the past, before digital, animators would draw on paper and pencil, and do all of their animation on paper. And then once they got the frames down and they liked how everything was going, it would move over to the paint and ink section. But the paint and ink section would paint on cellophane frames like this, called cells. They were transparent like this because you could overlay them onto a background. So you could just paint right on top, and then your background would come through, and then you were able to do whatever you needed to with that. So I just think that they're really cool. And while I totally understand why we moved to digital, because it is much easier, because while I never professionally worked on paper and pencil, we did learn it in school. When I went to SCAD, we did learn how to do it. So I do remember trying it. We had to do like a bunch of animation in our beginning, like our beginner animation classes, we had to do it on paper and pencil and then like scan it in and everything. So I will tell you that it makes sense that we switched to digital. It's so much more convenient. It's so much easier. But the shame is you don't get any traditional pieces anymore from like cartoons and stuff, which is always a bummer, especially with like the rise of AI. I feel like traditional media is almost going to be even more coveted. So what we're going to do is, like I said, we're going to do a fake animation cell today, and I'm going to be painting the puppets because why not? Obviously it's my like concept, it's a story, it's everything, and one of my dreams is to make it animated. I think it would be so cool to have it as like an animated thing, either like an animated cartoon or what. That would be amazing. I know I've always said I wanted to make the game, and I do want to make the game, but my true dream of it was to make it an animated film, whether it's like a episodic thing or like a movie. I have always felt like the true way that it would shine is through an animated movie or film. And so it was like kind of my ranking of making puppets content in a doability scale. Doability? Yeah, we're gonna go with that. In a doability scale, animated film is top tier, but also hardest. Then like small little indie game was second one, which I felt like was a little easier to manage. I could just do all the art and then, you know, we could pare it down into just like a visual novel thing. So that was the second tier. That's what I was aiming for initially because I thought it was a little more accessible. Still difficult to do. Then comic down here, which is like good enough. At least it's something that I can do on my own. I have my friend Carrie helping me write, but I can at least do all of the art and kind of like fit it into my schedule. But all of that to say, my like goal, dream, biggest dream ever would be to make like an animated show, movie, something. I have the vision, I have it in my head. It plays like an animated thing in my head, in my brain. I see the characters move. It just requires money and people and things that I don't have as an independent artist. So we're going to continue to tease my dream and make a fake cell. So let's go into top-down mode.
So the first thing I did was I sketched out what I was planning on my iPad, and I'm gonna use my iPad essentially as a light box, and I'm just gonna tape some paper over my screen and trace my sketch. I'm just using a mechanical pencil here, and it doesn't have to be perfect because this isn't the final image. So I just sketched out and like obviously cleaned up my lines so I knew exactly where I was doing my line art, but yeah, just a nice basic sketch. One thing that I noticed when I was looking at frames that were used for the basically like underlayer for the ink and paint cells is that they use different colors to denote different things. So I decided that I wanted to make sure that my lips were red, so I knew that that was going to be red line art. And then one of the things I also noticed was that they marked areas that were highlights with yellow. That way you wouldn't get confused by just like the white paper, so you knew that like those spots were going to be white. So I did that, but I kind of in general used it as highlights, like highlights on the eyes and nose and everything, but also highlights on their bodices and their hair. I don't know all of the rules for this. I'm assuming in general you would probably want one specific color for just white and then other colors for other things, but since I'm just doing it for myself, I kind of know what I'm trying to do. You know, I don't really need to mark it in any certain specific way. And this is the finished sketch. I also went in and added where I wanted all the highlights to be, like on the gloves and on their bodices and other areas that I might have missed in the initial tracing. And once I was pretty happy with my sketch and my markers, like my highlights and everything, now it was time to just jump right in. I grabbed my cell and I made sure that I taped it to the paper so that it wouldn't slip and slide around. I probably should have done even more tape because it would kind of like lift from the paper, so I'd have to like hold it down with my other hand. But yeah, we just kind of jump right in. Now, the thing that I do know with this is you have to treat it in layers, and you have to kind of think of every line you make as a layer. You want to think of your colors as like sitting on top of each other, because that's essentially what's happening. So the first thing that I want to put down is my line art, because I want that on top of everything else that I'm doing. So the line art has to be drawn first. Now I just am using all of my supplies that I have in my home. So I'm using just regular whatever acrylics from Joann's and some brushes that I have. And I realized pretty quickly that I probably would need like a specific liner brush for this. And I have some for like small details and stuff, but it just really wasn't hitting the way that I wanted it to. I needed like a specific brush, I feel like. And it was a brush that I kind of didn't have. Also, one thing to note that like my line art is pretty thick and it has a lot of thick and thin in it because I kind of tend to do that with my line art in general. I have a lot of like thick and thin lines. When you're animating, having a lot of thick and thin lines actually can cause the animation lines to boil, which is a term used in animation that means like it kind of jitters on screen. You'll see people use it on purpose. Sometimes for like text, it looks like it's wiggling kind of. It's okay if you're using it on purpose, but when you're not using it on purpose and the lines are just kind of boiling, it can be very distracting. So because I'm not actually animating this, it's not a big deal and I can use my thick and thin lines. But I think if I were to try to do this more like authentically, I would want a brush that could do a very uniform line and was thinner than the brush I was using, because I feel like my line art was very thick. So I would want something that was thinner and also more uniform, where the only parts that would taper were like the ends of lines and stuff like that. The acrylic as well, I think it was fine. There's like a part of it that was nice that I could just, if I made a mistake, and you've seen me do it a few times in this video so far, I could just take a little Q-tip and like scrape it off or like wipe it off. But the downside to that is like if I accidentally scraped it with my nail or something, it would scratch right off. Now, I don't know if that's something that happens with all paints on cells, so like you just have to be careful in general, or if it's just because I had some crappy acrylic paints. There is a specific type of paint that they used for this, and I think if I do this again, I'm gonna get that paint because I feel like it would just be better. Because one of the things that I found with this acrylic paint is that it was very thin, so you really had to like glob it on so that you wouldn't see through the paint. And even then, at points where I really thought that I globbed it on, when I ended up flipping it over to see the final result, I realized that there were parts that were still pretty thin. Now, reading some stuff online, people say you can use acrylic, and also a lot of people recommend gouache, which I'm like, oh, I have a bunch of gouache, I could have used that. But one of the benefits, I think, of having them in those like squeezy tubes, and you can kind of just get a bunch of colors, is that you don't have to mix them, and then you don't run into the issue if you were to actually do this professionally, or like if you're doing a lot of animation cells, you wouldn't have colors on the cell being slightly different from each other because you're like constantly mixing it. You have them straight from the bottle and you don't have to worry about the colors being off or slightly off. But yeah, that's my little spiel about some of the things that I noticed. Now that I had the line art done, and then I put my highlights down because I wanted my highlights to be the next thing that pops, I started mixing skin color, but then I also realized like I need to do cheek color first because the cheek color is gonna sit on top of the skin color. So I had to do that one first. And then I also realized that I needed to go in and add other highlights, so like the lips and the highlights on the bodies, because you also have to let them dry. So I got impatient a few times and just tried to finagle it, and you'll see at the end that it caused a little bit of mess ups. So don't be impatient. Let the paint dry. But yeah, this is the point where I realized like, oh, I should be putting all of my highlights down first. So I did the lips, and then I did the highlights on the eyelids and the hair, the bodices, the tights, all of that type of stuff. Now is the part where we glob on the paint. This is very satisfying to me. If you were doing shadows, like cell shading, you would be putting the shadows down first and then the base colors. But I wasn't really doing any sort of cell shading, so we're just kind of laying down the flat skin colors. You have to really cake it on, glob it on, especially because my acrylics were so thin. So I had to really just like chunk it, like big globs. And it can be a little messy because you shouldn't be able to see through the line art. But you do have to be careful because you don't want it to bleed over the line art, which I accidentally did a few times. But yeah, chunky, thick. The thicker, the better. Once honey was finished, I mean, I was essentially done. I cleaned up a bunch of spots that I had all over the cell from me being a lefty. Because if you're a lefty, you know, you smudge. It's so easy to smudge because you drag your hand across things. So I always end up getting paint all on the side of my hand and smudging it everywhere. But yeah, I just went in and cleaned up all of the spots, and on the back it looks so weird, but here's the moment of truth when we flip it over and see how it turned out. let's go to the glamour shots.
Okay, we're back. Let's talk about it. I am really happy for the most part with how it turned out. I think it looks really cute, especially for my first time doing this. There are obviously things that I would fix or change, some things that I learned like as I was going. I got a little impatient sometimes and didn't let the paint properly dry, which then caused like issues of like, you know, bleeding kind of, or I also didn't put it on thick enough in certain areas, so you kind of can see through it every now and then. My lines were a little shaky here and there, and I think it's also because I have a hunch that when I take my Vyvanse for ADHD, when I'm like, I need to like sit down and focus on things that I do, sometimes I'm like, I need to sit down and focus on the art that I'm doing. I have a hunch it makes my hands shaky because like when I'm not taking it, I have a very steady hands. But I've noticed recently that like, I'm like, why are my hands so shaky? And I think it's maybe because of the Vyvanse. So next time I do this, I'm not gonna take my Vyvanse and I'm just gonna try to paint it normally. Some things that I want to do for next time, because I definitely want to do this again. Different type of liner brush. I think I need a very specific type of liner brush. I want to make my lines a little thinner because technically if I was to actually animate this, the thick and thin lines would be a pain in the ass. And there's a reason why a lot of animation has like very uniform lines because it's way easier to track. So I want to get a different type of liner brush for that. I also think I need a different type of paint, but I definitely think I need like a better quality paint that's like denser and not as like when you painted it, like you see the streaks. So with this, you really had to like load it up on the back so that you wouldn't see through it. And like you can still kind of see through areas. Like if I hold it up to the light, I don't know if you'd be able to tell, but so those are the things that I want to do next. And I do want to do this again because this was actually really fun. And like the reveal is so satisfying to me. Like, oh, like it was so cool to flip it around and be like, oh my gosh, it worked. So I do want to do this again. So let me know if you want me to do this again and do like a different cell animation thing. I don't know exactly what like scene I would do, or maybe I could do like a different thing. Maybe I could do Roswell, like Susan the Alien or something, but it's really fun to like make it into kind of like a fake animation cell. So yeah, this was such a good blast. I'm gonna have to do some research and look up what type of paints I need to get and like liner brush and you know, all of that type of stuff and get more like professional tools for cell painting. But I do really enjoy this, and it's one of the things that I've always thought about if I ever made a Kickstarter for the puppets. One of the like rewards I would want to do is like fake cells like this. If like it would be like a limited amount and you would get like a fake animation cell, it'd obviously be for like a higher backer, but it was really fun to like practice this and do this, and I really want to do it again, which is like funny to say coming from my last video, which was the needlepoint, where I was like, not for me, I wouldn't do this again. This one I'm like, I really want to do this again. So yeah, let me know down below what you want me to do next as an animation cell, because this was so fun and so satisfying. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.